Final men's race of the day is the 5th varsity for Harvard and Brown. It ends up being the rubber match of the day. Harvard, no matter what, will keep the Stein Cup as they won at first varsity. But Harvard's won 2, Brown's won 2. The first varsity and third varsity for the Crimson, the JV and the fourth varsity for Bruno. So Dave Pereski, if you want the bragging rights of winning more individual races today, it all comes down to these guys in the 5V.
Yeah, jungle rules out here. You don't know how this one's going to go. You know, you can get different... You can get really varied crews here, and so you often see crews that are very aggressive at the start often win, just because some of the more inexperienced racers at times in these lower boats. But you really don't know how these are going to go. These can be really fun races.
Harvard dominated the 1V and the 3V. The 2V was a very close finish with Brown just sneaking by less than a second. Then the 4V, it looked like Brown had a big lead. Harvard came back late and ended up only losing by a couple of seats again.
Yeah, tight racing. And as we talked about, the Brown guys looking to change the tune of their season.
Yep. Yeah, they
right?
Started the year with 2 losses, and they were losses up and down. Brown was swept by BU last weekend, so getting wins at 2V and 4V can maybe get them going. For Harvard, they're getting ready to dive into some more tough competition. They have Princeton coming up, so might be some tinkerings after the losses, especially at 2V.
Yeah, you never know. And then the one thing I would say is the conditions muddy things. You know, you got to row the day you got to race, but conditions make things a problem. Looks like we have a start here.
Yeah, clean start. Harvard and Brown bringing things home in the 5th varsity race.
Looks like Brown is up.
And Brown at the bottom of your picture, Harvard at the top for this race. Starts have been tough today with the wind and the wake and the waves down here with some serious chop in the basin.
Yep. Looks like Brown started very aggressively. Harvard's rowing pretty low relative to Brown. They've got a punch in here, sort of falling asleep.
Yeah, Brown has about a 4-seat lead already.
Nah, that's almost a length.
Yeah, now it's up to almost a full length. You're right, and that's what we saw early on today. If you could get off to that big start in these types of conditions, you had the ability to explode your lead early and then just kind of take it home.
Brown has overstruck them pretty dramatically here, looking much cleaner.
Brown has open water already against Harvard here at 5th varsity.
Looks like Brown's facing a little bit of water now, but yeah, this is not a good start for the Crimson.
For Harvard, now or never if you want to get back to getting contact here with that Brown boat, as Brown is open water and it's growing.
Yeah, you can just see Brown guys are running very clean. It really makes a difference in the first 500.
Final race of the day on the men's side. We still have one more women's race to go, the 3rd varsity between Radcliffe, Princeton, and Cornell to round out the day. You know, conditions have not been ideal with the wind and the chop, but this time of year on the Charles, you know, you're always kind of rolling the dice. We've had worse days the past few years here.
Yeah, Brown has ended this early. This is, they're pushing this lead out pretty huge. Rowing pretty nicely along here at 35, 36. And the Crimson have got to be at like a 31, 32. The lead grows every stroke. This is going to be a big win for Brown.
Yeah, you can notice even visually the difference in the stroke rate right now between Brown and Harvard, as Brown has a big lead early, as big a lead as we've seen over the first 500 meters from anybody so far today.
Yeah.
It's the rubber match of this matchup between Harvard and Brown. Crimson won the Stein Cup with the win at 1V. They also won 3V. Brown won 2V and 4V, and looks like they may take the 5V, barring one of the most dramatic comebacks you'd see here over the last 1,200 meters or so.
Looks like Brown is infringing pretty dramatically on Harvard's lane. Given their lead, they've drifted over into Harvard's given assignment.
Referee is just waving the flag to warn
they've
them.
been warned a lot. Not sure that's really going to make a difference in the outcome here, but you might see a protest, but Brown is pushing out this lead. I mean, it's got to be 10 seconds by the 1,000 here.
Yep. Coming up to the bridge at 1,000.
Harvard's cleaning up a little bit now that they're in a little bit better water. You can see they're still rowing together and long, but it's visually they're being overstroked.
Yeah, they have left themselves a ton of work to do on the back half of this race as Brown is through the opening 1,000 with, what would you say, a 4 or 5 length lead at this point at least?
Yeah, this is big. This is big. Brown's just got to take this home safe. But yeah, Brown's still rowing very aggressively. Hats off to him. I mean, we talked about the Harvard JV 3V dynamic. You probably got the Brown 5V, 4V, 3V dynamic going on, where they may still have some things to be thinking about.
And maybe even some JV versus varsity dynamic for Brown as well, as the varsity team is now 0-3 for the Bears after the loss today, but the JV team just knocked off the defending national champions.
Yep, and given the weather this spring, again, not uncommon to still have plenty of seat racing left to go to figure out lineups.
Most coaches are willing to be pretty fluid at this type of the season to figure out what's going to work for them as they get toward the latter half of the year. You obviously want to know, for the most part, what your lineups are going to look like by the time you get to late April and approach the sprints.
Yeah, and coaches can have an idea, but in some of these lower boats, where the quality of the rowing can be varied, certain guys might click better with other guys, and that's just sort of a fact of life, whether or not their org scores tell a different story.
A huge lead for Brown. They've come to about the 500-meter to go mark as they pass the MIT boathouse. Meanwhile, look at that Harvard crew rowing nice and quietly now, but again, that first 500 meters put them so far behind. They were just out of the race 500 meters in.
Yeah. And it just feels like they haven't been able to probably row the rate and type of rowing they want to do. It just, they were really fighting themselves in the first 500, and Brown was able to keep it together, and that was sort of determine the outcome, and then the margin is a different story.
When you're going back to the drawing board, you have a race like this, and you realize you didn't have your rate where you want it to be. What are some of the correctable things you can do to get that rate up for the next race?
I think a lot of it is rowing together, and then I think you need to have a crew that's committed as a group to rowing at higher rates. And again, we talked about experience in some of the lower boats. I haven't taken a hard look at the lineup. You might see maybe some
number of freshmen on this group.
Possibly some walk-ons, where this might in fact be their very first race.
Yep.
So, they're not prepared for what it looks like, to row at a high rate against another crew where you're trying to take their shirt. I mean, that really gets your heart rate going, and this will be a good learning experience. But even still, the Brown guys are rowing at a more aggressive rate than our
they have
guys.
grown their lead the entire way. At this point, we're talking about likely a 15 to 20 second margin when we get to the finish line.
Yeah, and the Brown guys, I'm sure, will have possibly heard about the 4V getting pushed into in the last 250, and so they'll want to make sure that didn't happen to them.
It's a good point you bring. How often are you getting the intel from the groups that have gone before you when you only have 20 minutes between races?
You will get it from the guys who are rowing back. So the top boats who have already gone might give a quick scouting report to the lower boats coming to the warm-up area. The coaching staff might tell you a couple things, but it's sort of this unwritten rule to let the rowers row and not talk to your boat.
Brown finishes it off as the flag drops. A dominant performance in 5V for Brown.
But the coaches may give the guys tips about, how to think about rowing, or another adjustment that's always made is that these clams on the oars, which basically shorten the lever, which might make it easier to get through the water, and allow a higher rate. I would assume that they're rowing with clams on, but there's the whole science of rigging, which is quite an ordeal as well. That I'm sure that rowing in a race like this, you don't prepare or train in winds like these, and so there could be a scenario in which you might want to rig it differently. But It is what it is.
Harvard brings it home to finish things off in second place. 5V win for Brown. And we'll come back for our final race of the day. The women's third varsity between Harvard, Radcliffe, Princeton, and Cornell is coming up next on the Ivy League Digital Network.